Got something to say? Get in on the conversation at 415-915-2291. That's 415-915-CALL-1.
Good evening. Welcome to Conspiracies Against Wellness. I'm your host, Janelle Elgaway. Just a little blip tonight. Dr. Forrest Tennant, who will be joining us, had an emergency, and he's going to be joining us in about 20 minutes. So I was thinking what I can do is talk a little bit about what he will be talking about, who he is, and about so what we're talking about tonight is the opioid epidemic or crisis and the war on pain patients. And I have a personal story within this, so I will do my best to talk about that. So tonight, if you have any questions or comments for my guests or myself, please call in at 415-915-2291 or call 1. Or you can comment or question on our YouTube channel, Conspiracies Against Wellness live stream. So tonight we have Dr. Forrest Tennant joining us to live talk about the war on pain patients and the opioid crisis. Opioids have become the newest enemy in the war on drugs. Doctors are becoming afraid to prescribe them. People in severe chronic pain are suffering due to the CDC guidelines and bunching them together with addicts and those who have sadly lost their lives due to addiction and overdose. If you turn on the TV or scroll through social media, you'll most likely see a story about the dangers of opioids. Headlines such as "Lawmakers Seek Crackdown on Opioids," "Opioid Prescriptions Abuse, Probe Seeing a Record of 28 Doctors Hit with Sanctions Locally," "The Nation's Opioid Epidemic Keeps Death Toll Rising," "Heroin Deaths Surpass Gun Homicides for the First Time." Wow. There's a lot to talk about with overdoses due to prescription opioids and heroin. We constantly hear about the large amount of accidental deaths that we are not hearing about what we are not hearing about is all the chronic pain patients that are also victims. Chronic pain patients' bodies in uncontrollable pain creates other major health issues, which leads to death and suicide. Doctors are cutting off regular chronic pain patients of many years in good standing, meaning the chronic pain patient never have asked for early prescription refills. They take their prescriptions as directed. They only fill the main prescribing doctor prescription, and they use the same pharmacy. So what's going on here? So tonight, Dr. Tennant and I will dive into all of this and more. And in case if you don't know who Dr. Tennant is, he is the leading expert in pain management through hormone replacement. He has served as a consultant to a wide variety of organizations such as the FDA, the DEA, also entertainment. I'm so sorry tonight, man. I'm nervous because I don't have them on with me. Entertainment industries like the NASCAR and NFL. So, have you been personally affected by the current opioid crisis? If so, you aren't alone. According to recent surveys, over 97 million people rely on opioids to control pain. Yet statistics indicate that deaths from prescription opioids have been leveling off since 2011. However, deaths from heroin and fentanyl have increased steadily, with fentanyl being responsible for over half of all overdose fatalities. So why are most experts insisting a half of all opioid prescriptions must occur? Unfortunately, an estimated 12 million people are taking prescription drugs without a prescription, which has resulted in lawmakers' decisions to find alternative pain management measures to lessen the need for opioids. So where does this lead the estimated 85 million people who are using prescribed opioids for legitimate reasons? Currently, the medical community is divided on how to treat intractable pain. Some believe they should treat pain patients and to cope with their emotions. Oh, I'm sorry, pain patients are, it's their emotions, or that it's really just pain, or they're just addicts. And tonight, Dr. Forrest Tennant will definitely explain all of that. Um, let's see here. So Dr. Tennant, he started his pain clinic in 1975, originally focused on treating the pain of cancer and post-polio disease. He has authored over 300 scientific articles and books, including a handbook for pain patients called the Intractable Pain Patient's Handbook for Survival. Dr. Tennant is also a member of the American Academy of Pain Medicine, the American Academy of Pain Management, the American Pain Society, and the American Society of Addiction Medicine. He has formerly served as a medical officer in the U.S. Army and U.S. Public Health Service. In the past, Dr. Tennant has been a consultant to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and FDA and DEA, LA Dodgers, National Football Team, and NASCAR again. Dr. Tennant is also the editor of Practical Pain Management, the nation's most widely circulated pain journal for physicians. And I know he had a article this past November, and he was going to talk about that. I don't remember offhand what it exactly says, but I know it's about how to, I think it's about how to talk to your doctors. So I'm going to, until he pops on here, which is in about 10 minutes, I'm going to talk a little bit about me. And Brian, my sound tech, is going to also help me out here and ask some questions. So 23 years ago, I was in a car accident. I broke my neck and C3, C4. I've had, since then, 5 neck surgeries. I'm fused from my C3 to C7. I've had 4 rods at my C6, 7, and a laminectomy. I have been on pain medication, and in fact, I was on pain medication for 12 years straight. Honestly, I wasn't going to come on, even air. I didn't even want to do this show because I was afraid of what could happen to my treatment possibly coming into the future. And I know a lot of chronic pain patients deal with the same thing. We are afraid to stand up, but this is me standing up. Because if we don't start doing this, these are all going to be taken away anyway. So I'm standing up, and I'm trying not to be afraid anymore. And I just invite you guys to do the same with me. I do know Dr. Tennant has a write-up that he would like all of us to take to our senators, doctors, whoever. If we don't feel comfortable doing it as a chronic pain patient, if we take it into our let our family or friends do it for us. But we need to get everybody possible that we can do, because this is not going away, and it's just going to get worse. And Dr. Tennant will come on shortly and let us know a lot more about this in depth. But it's scary. I know it is. So I was on pain medications, I think, for 12, 13 years straight. Along with a few other things. And the last year, I was able to get off of them and go into remission. I have a CRPS, complex regional pain syndrome, which is an autoimmune issue or disease. I don't know if it's considered disease or not. I go back and forth from doctors of what they say, which they've said it on air for us. But I also have degenerative disc disease, Raynaud's disease, fibromyalgia, PTSD, and ADHD. And my neck, for me, my worst stuff is my neck stuff. All the permanent nerve damage I have. So I have trouble with that. But in combination, so it seems like when one works, or when one's like acting up, the other one isn't, thankfully. But I've had times where they both act up, and then that is just pure hell for me, basically. And Dr. Tennant will also go over the 6 or half a dozen chronic pain issues that definitely should have a prescription for opiates or narcotics, no matter what. And I was always told that my entire life, actually, that I would never have this issue. So, and I've never shared this publicly yet, but So I went into remission for CRPS that I have in my arms, hands, face, mouth, and head. And then what happened so I was off everything, and my doctor, I wasn't filling my prescriptions and stuff like that. And I didn't really get this because I did see signs in his windows in the beginning of this year saying, I think it was 90 milligrams. Say if you're on morphine, which you were only allowed to have the most of 90 milligrams a day now, which Dr. Tennant said that is actually just a guideline, and it really isn't a definite mandate thing. So I'm just wondering why all of our doctors are telling us that, because I know my doctor in North Carolina said that I was only allowed to take that amount, or he wanted me to go as low as possible at some point or whatever, and which I was off. Anyway, he ended up firing me in March. I've never the list I went through earlier of being a good chronic pain patient and not filling prescriptions incorrectly, not asking for early medications, not going to different pharmacies. I have never done any of that. So when I got a letter in the mail which said, and I don't have it on me, but it just basically said due to patient and doctor trust and confidentiality, he can no longer see me because there's no trust. And this was March 3rd. Well, it was dated March 3rd. I think I got it the 8th of March. And he said, I will not fill another prescription. If you need anything, go to a rehab place. So he didn't even give me 30 days, which I believe they're supposed to do, but I don't know. And I don't know really where I broke my contract. And because I'm on disability, we're supposed to be, I kind of need to be going to a pain management doctor. And if any health issues come up, which they did, after a few months, of course, I went back out of remission, and now I'm back into having issues again constantly. So this is where I've been. Brian, do you have any questions for me until we're...
Well, yeah. So your life since your accident when you were 16 has been quite a journey, and you've obviously had a lot of different procedures, and over the course of your life you've had to deal with a number of different drugs, different doctors, and you constantly face challenges. And would you say that finding the right medication for you is one of your greatest challenges?
Yes, the combination is important, and it took me years to find that combination. So I was like 23 when I really started I'm 39 now, when I really started having to be on regular stuff, and it took at least 5 years to find the combination that worked correctly for me. And because I was so young and in my 20s at the time, everybody, even though they knew my health issues and, my neck issues and stuff like that, doctors still were weird about, I had trouble with it. And finally, in the last, 8 years probably, I haven't had as many trouble. And I was kind of thinking it's because I'm older now. But I'm not really sure, because I'm not really that old either compared to what doctors say. They always say, well, you're really young still to have all these issues, which I understand I am. But yeah, it took me a long time. And it's not just the combination of medications. I think it's important that we do everything that we possibly have control over to help us. So we want to do everything that we can do. And that's what I did. And I'll just talk about what I did. But I was an athlete growing up early on, but it took me, it never clicked with me like, oh, I should be using my foods, I should be exercising regularly, I should be doing all these things and pushing myself, not a bad push, but just pushing to work and make sure I'm moving every day. And when I started doing a combination of all of that along with the medications, yes, that's when I was able to start doing really well. I got stem cell injections. I moved to a little bit warmer climate. But these are decisions I made, and where the lengths I went to, and it really did help me. It's changed my life, honestly. I have never had this quality of life in the last year and a half. Although, since, what was it? I think it was June, I started to get really bad again this past June. So now I'm all over again. And the thing is my doctor at least doesn't want to keep me on the same stuff. And I understand. I've been trying not to go back up to any of that. And I don't take it regularly, but I still take it a lot. By the way, we have two comments. AMA from Thea Barnes, sorry. AMA ethical standards require member physicians to provide patients with adequate pain control, respect to patient autonomy, and good communications. And then she says, you said you had been taking opioids to relieve your pain over the last 23 years. Isn't this long enough to realize you aren't an addict? Oh, well, I haven't been on opiates for 23 years. I've been dealing with this stuff for 23 years. When I was 16 is when it started for me, but in my 20s, young 20s, is when I started really, really dealing with it after I re-broke my neck and was paralyzed in my arm for a period of time. And I had to work my way back, and then I had neck surgeries after that. So yeah, I don't know. Isn't this long enough that I to show that I'm not an addict? This is the thing, though, is what they're doing is they're bunching chronic pain patients with addicts. And I do want to say I am so sorry to anybody that has passed away to overdose and that has been addicted to this. My first fiance, or my first love of my life, even in college, he passed away to pain medicine and heroin a few years back. And, you know, it touches a lot of families. It's all over, and nobody, I mean, this is not a social or socioeconomic or anything. This is a everybody kind of thing. But the pain patients should not be getting. Are we here yet?
I believe
okay.
that our doctor is calling in.
Okay. Sorry.
Let's see if he's here.
Give us a moment here, and we're going to get Dr. Tennant on. Dr. Tennant?
Hello.
Hi, Dr. Tennant. Hi, how are you?
How you doing? Oh, pretty good. And then it's a long day.
I bet.
Physicians these days are having long days.
Well, thank you for joining us, and I hope everything's okay there. So,
you bet.
I was just telling our audience about, a little bit about the war on pain patients and the opioid crisis. But let's just jump right into you, because I talked about you already a little bit too. Can you please tell us about your education, background, and expertise when you originally became a doctor, and what was your focus?
Well, just very quickly, I'm from the state of Kansas and went to medical school, partially at the request and benevolence of the United States Army, and then I served during the Vietnam War years overseas for a few years, and then transferred from there to the Public Health Service in the UCLA, and worked here in Los Angeles ever since 1973. And my interest outside of general internal medicine was always addiction medicine and pain. And we started a pain clinic here in Los Angeles in 1975. And at that time, it was for intractable cases, severe pain cases, because California has actually been the leading state in treatment of severe pain, mainly because a lot of sailors and soldiers settled here after World War II and after Korea. And so treating severe pain in California has been quite different from other states. And I've been at it ever since that time. And, of course, here we've had a steady dose of research for many years. And we've always got a number of studies that are going on. And we do have in California something called a Pain Patient Bill of Rights. Mm-hmm. And so we do things here a little different than the other states.
Okay, how?
I'm sorry?
Oh, how do you do things differently in California from everywhere else?
Well, I think here, first off, the state of California has actually a more restrictive set of guidelines than the CDC guidelines. Mm. Okay? The only difference is that they implement them fairly. We have an 80 milligram reevaluation point, And we go over that all the time, as well as long as we document it, and as long as we do it legitimately and give a good reason and cause, then we prescribe what is needed for the patient, not what some government agency or insurance company wants, but we, the physicians at least have the ability, if it's documented, to prescribe what is needed for each individual patient.
Mm-hmm. So, these are just guidelines, right? Because I was just telling our audience that that I learned from you that it's not actually. So when a doctor, so for everywhere else, at least for North Carolina, it's 90 milligrams of the they suggest, but that doesn't mean the actual law, right? Like, because my doctor told me that everybody has to get down to 90 milligrams, or for you guys 80 milligrams. So that's not true, correct?
Yeah. No, it is not true. In other words, all the guidelines say is that to go over the 90 milligrams, that a patient needs to be evaluated and it needs to be carefully determined that the patient needs to go above that. Keep in mind that the CDC guidelines are also for primary care doctors. They are not for pain specialists. Mm-hmm. And so any physician can go over the 90 if they want to. I think what they're having trouble, however, in individual states, because individual states are trying to tell them that they don't want to see them go over 90, but they certainly have a the legal ability to do so. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, if a patient feels that they've got to have over 90 milligrams and they're not, and their doctor's not willing to give it to them, then that's called a complaint to their medical board.
Right. How and where did this whole issue with pain patients, addicts, and opiates come about, and when did this start, and how and why did it start?
Well, what they've attempted to do, in my opinion, for economic reasons, is confuse the issue between who's an addict and who a pain patient is. Now, that's a phony division. You have people going around the country who are saying that every patient every chronic pain patient who's on opioid is an addict, or the new name is opioid use disorder. Well, that's ridiculous. It's very easy for any kind of a practitioner who's experienced to know who is a drug addict and who's a legitimate pain patient. And it's real simple, and I don't know why this is so hard to grasp. An addict on the street takes opioid drugs for something other than pain treatment. A pain patient says, I take these drugs for my pain. That's not an addict, that's a pain patient. An addict will say, no, I don't have severe chronic pain, I take it for other reasons. Now, those other reasons may vary from individual addict to individual addict, but it's not for pain. So right there you've got the division. And now you have a handful of people who may be addicts who also have pain, but that's easy to determine also. And the other big myth that's around out there is this. A patient who has enough pain to require opioids has plenty of objective medical evidence to show the need. It may be a physical findings showing that the spine or the nerves or the muscles or the joints have some kind of infirmity. It may be blood tests showing that inflammation markers are up or hormone abnormalities exist. You may have what they call overstimulation of the autonomic nervous system, which includes such things as high blood pressure, too much sweating, too high of a heart rate, dilated pupil, too much reflexes. In other words, it is not difficult for a physician to determine that someone is a legitimate pain patient. Mm. This idea that you can't determine is not correct. It's just that I guess some people don't want to determine whether they are legitimate pain patients or not.
We got a comment in from Thea Barnes. Are physicians not following the guideline recommendations for opioid administration because it's too complicated, or because they don't have the time to spend with the patient?
I think it's both.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't think you can blanket the country. It'll vary from practice to practice, physician to physician. Some physicians today are being asked by their health plans to see 30 or 50 patients a day, and if they're being required to see that many patients a day in their health plan, you certainly don't have time to to validate that someone needs an opioid drug. That's not going to happen. So you can just kind of rule that out right away. And then you're going to have other physicians who just don't want to deal with pain patients. They don't understand pain patients. They don't like their personalities. They don't like their demanding ways. They don't like the paperwork. They don't like the regulations. So they're just saying no. And unfortunately, I think a lot of physicians today are using the 90 milligram level as an excuse not to treat pain patients.
What is your response to the blame that has been put on the doctors saying that they overprescribed opiates in the 1990s and is the alleged cause for the opioid epidemic?
Yes. Okay, now you're getting into something that's an ugly part of the history of all this. Those of us who were in practice prior to 1990 were shocked at what happened in the 90s. Here's what happened. The pharmaceutical companies and government agencies and professional organizations, particularly your anesthesiologists and a lot of the universities, including big-name universities, all got together and declared that they were no longer going to follow the World Health Organization three-step analgesic ladder. You probably don't know what that is, but the three steps fundamentally mean that you treat every pain patient first off with physical therapy and non-drug means. And then the second step is that you use drugs that are not opioids or weak opioids, and you don't go to the third step unless you have to, and that's when you go to the strong opioids. Well, all of a sudden we have some companies inventing something called Duragesic patches and OxyContin and maybe some other drugs, and they came to physicians and said, you no longer have to treat anybody with non-opioid drugs first. These drugs are not addictive. They last a long time, and go ahead and prescribe these to anybody who has a common pain problem, such as a bad shoulder or a back sprain or arthritis or fibromyalgia. In other words, they said to go ahead and treat the common pain problems with these long-acting opioids. Well, you now know the end of that story. Some of us were highly criticized in those years, highly condemned, in fact, for telling the drug companies and the government agencies, this is not correct. You can dress up oxycodone any way you want to dress it up, or fentanyl any way you want to dress it up, whether it's in a patch or a lollipop. It still has addictive and abuse tendencies. It still can cause overdoses. These are very powerful drugs which should never, never be used except as a last resort. Well, you have this movement to do otherwise, and so what's happened, we now have literally thousands of people in this country on high-dose opioids that should never have been put there, and they didn't need to be there, but they never were given anything else. Now, some doctors have the excuse, well, this is what I was taught to do, this is what I was told to do, this is what is on the label, and that's all true. And so it's a little erroneous to sort of blame the doctors because they were told to do this. I remember going to many conferences where family doctors or nurse practitioners were told, go ahead and prescribe a Duragesic patch rather than putting somebody on physical therapy or on topical medications or anti-inflammatory agents. And so therefore, a lot of those people did get hooked, if you will. And so there's a lot of legitimacy to the claims that there was overzealous prescribing beginning in the 1990s. Well, that part's over now. Opioid prescribing in this country has been coming down for about 5 years. In fact, it's been coming down considerably, and even the federal government has to admit now that the overdose problem is really illegal street drugs. It's not really prescription drugs.
Oh, really? Because the stats that I've been reading from everywhere is saying that it's going up, and there's going to be 500,000 more people in the next decade, and how this is just a mass hysteria, bad thing, and it just seems like they're trying to scare everybody. I just don't understand why.
Well, absolutely. That's all roots. That's all fraud. The public needs to demand right now, who are these overdoses? I want the average age. I want the location. I want to know if these are patients who are under medical care for a legitimate pain condition. Right. And what you're running to find is that no, these are not patients who are in pain treatment for a legitimate pain problem. People who are taking opioids that have a legitimate pain problem, most of those people are certainly over 40 years of age. The average age in my program, for example, would be 55 years of age or so. But who's overdosing? People who are 25 years of age. And also, people, these are not people in pain clinics that are competently run by competent physicians. So they're trying to use the pain patient and pain physicians as the reason why these overdoses are occurring. And I think that everybody who hears this broadcast or any others or hears about this data should ask, first off, hold on, I want to know who is overdosing. I want to know the age group, their education. I want to know if they were addicts or are these patients really under doctor's care in a legitimate pain program and have a real diagnosis, such as reflex sympathetic dystrophy or retinoiditis? Are these really pain patients? They're not. These are the same old people who have been overdosing for years, not in the numbers we have now, because the numbers are way up there, but they're way up there because the heroin and the fentanyl that's on the street illegally is extremely potent. And these people are dying because they're just taking these drugs under the belief that they can either handle them or that they think they're safe. But these are street drug users. These are not solid pain patients who are good citizens who have a severe disease for no fault of their own.
So I want to ask, what good has occurred because of opiates? Like, how has this helped humanity?
Well, I don't think that's no mystery at all. In other words, just go talk to some pain patients. Come to my practice. Go to a good pain doctor's practice and go talk to those patients. And people will tell you, look, I can function. I can keep my family together. I can go to school. I can work. If I'm really impaired, at least I can have a good quality life. In other words, you can go and find all kinds of good in opioids. Just talk to the patient who takes them. That's all. You don't have to go out there on the street in front of the bar or anything else. You don't have to go along on a go-along ride with the cops. Just go to doctors' offices or clinics where they treat pain patients and ask them to speak to pain patients who are doing well. They're not hard to find. As a matter of fact, there are millions of people in this country right now who are taking opioids and doing very well on them.
Have you ever been told to stop writing prescriptions for opiates?
No.
No. Has your life been threatened because of what you're doing?
It looked like I had some threats clear back in the 90s when we passed the Pain Patient Bill of Rights. Yes, I had some problems back at that time. That was in about 1998. But since that time, no, I've not had any difficulties at all. But we did have a problem at that time. There have always been people in this country who want to who don't want pain treatment, because pain treatment that is successful takes money out of somebody's pockets. In other words, patients who are successfully treated with pain don't show up in hospital emergency rooms. They don't show up in psychiatric facilities. They don't show up in the surgery suite, or they don't show up in jail, or they're not having driving accidents. They are good, solid citizens. And so, there's a lot of economic reasons by some parties, and a lot of them aren't very scrupulous, who believe that pain treatment is against their economic greed.
Do chronic pain patients need to worry about the law that will ban opiates in the near future? And if so, what can they do to prepare for this? I know we went through a list when we talked last that you can suggest to them.
Well, first off, I think the patients in this country are naive. They do not understand. And a lot of them have been told some time back, you're going to have trouble. Either you need to do something. Now, what should they do? Well, the first thing they need to do is to understand that they need to bring their opioid dosage down by taking some drugs with either non-prescription or prescription that will at least help them lower their opioid dosage. The idea is that in most states in this country, you're going to be able to keep taking your opioid at the dosage you've been taking. Doesn't look realistic to me. They've gone ahead and passed some laws that are draconian, some regulations that are ridiculous, some guidelines that are absolutely against the nature of human caring. But the pain patients have sat there and watched this happen. So is their families. 9 out of 10 pain patients in this country don't know that if they're not getting good pain care, the first thing they should do is call their state medical board and turn the doctors in who aren't giving them good care. That's the first thing they should do. The second thing they should do, they've got to go to their insurance company and tell their insurance company why they need these medications. The pain patients in this country have too long tried to stay in the closet, tried to keep it totally private, and tried not to come out and to join the movement to keep their rights to having these medications. Now, I recommend the United Nations stand to everyone. It's not well known, but I just wrote an editorial about this. In January of 2013, the United Nations declared that untreated pain is the same thing as inhumane treatment, cruelty, and torture. So that's the United Nations. And everybody in this country needs to understand, do you believe that untreated pain is torture, cruelty, and inhumane treatment? Or do you think it's okay to deprive people of pain treatment and let people die in misery at a young age? In other words, it's time to call it like it is.
Yeah.
But the patients have got to join in themselves. They can't sit there and hope their local doctor is going to do something for them, or their insurance company's got to do something for them, or the advocacy group's got to do something for them. They've got to pitch in. And remember, each state has something called a medical board. And any doctor who isn't treating them right, the state medical board needs to be called. If they can't find treatment, the state medical board should be called. Their insurance company should be called and told, I'm paying for a policy, you're supposed to be covering me. I get very resentful from the programs who claim how it's going to take care of you and we're going to be saved by all these programs, but then you join one and you can hardly get code on. It's ridiculous. It's unfair.
Well, and you mentioned to me,
it's time we call it like it is.
And you mentioned to me that you can die from pain, and this is not suicide. You can die from pain just from being in high levels of pain. What will happen to your body if you don't take care of this?
Oh, we've known for decades. There's no mystery. Pain is known to kill. Here's what happened. If you have severe untreated pain, and most of the people who are listening to this probably have had or still have severe pain. So what does severe pain do? First thing it does is drive up your cortisone and the lipids in your blood, which is the same as cholesterol. It drives up your blood pressure and your pulse rate. And if you drive up your cortisone, your pulse rate, and your blood pressure high enough, long enough, pretty soon you get adrenal exhaustion. And when that happens, you die in your sleep from cardiac adrenal failure. Now, this happens all the time. Anybody who's certainly been in the military, anybody who's been around terminal illness, anybody who's been around pain patients knows this is what happens. And so they keep trying to tell you that pain is just a nuisance that doesn't need to be treated. Nothing could be further from the truth.
You recently had an article published in the Practical Pain Management September issue discussing dosage and milligrams of morphine and how to prescribe, which our listeners can find on our website under guests and other social media accounts. Can you please talk about this article and the significance of it? You know,
which one could you give me?
It's the
month about this.
It's the Practical Pain Management you just in this past month, and I know you're going to be coming out in the next month too in another one. I didn't know if you wanted to speak about that too. This one's about the 90 milligrams, and it's a letter. Yeah, it's a letter to actually take your doctor, I believe, or was that?
Sure. Let me talk about it. The tragedy of that is this. The CDC guidelines were drafted in 2015, I think, around Christmas, in 2016, early on. We've now gone almost 2 years, and not a single government agency, not a single university, Not a single drugstore chain, not a single professional agency has written a single paragraph on how the practicing doctor of America is to determine the criteria for who can be prescribed over 90 milligrams. Well, I kept thinking, well, I keep waiting for someone to do this. Now, the government agencies will give you a whole handbook on how to take your dosages. Well, where's the guidelines on how you can take the dosages over 90? Well, so I and my own network, we decided to write our criteria, and it's the only one written for doctors. And so, at least somebody had to start writing about this. And so what we've done is lay down on a single tabular formation on how a doctor can determine who is eligible to go up over 90. And they're pretty simple, common sense things. First thing is that you've got to fail non-opioid treatments. And you've failed low-dose treatments. You got to have a physical exam showing that you have legitimate pain, and you got to have some laboratory tests, things like inflammatory markers, maybe some hormone levels, maybe some genetic tests. Maybe what about an MRI of your spine showing whether you have arachnoiditis or chronic slip discs? In other words, document that you have legitimate pain and if you have failed other treatments, and that's how you determine whether you should go over 90 milligrams. It's not rocket science stuff. It's just common sense, but it's the only place I know that anyone gives physicians in this country any guidance on how to take people up over 90.
Can you give advice to chronic pain patients and how they should speak to their pain management doctors?
Yes, I think first off, they need to be aware of things we're talking about here tonight. In other words, I want all the advocacy groups and everybody to have every pain patient and the family know that those CDC guidelines are not cutoff levels at 90 milligrams. They're to reevaluate what needs to be done. I think the patients need to have a frank talk with their physician, and I think they need to tell the physician, look, I want to try to get by with as low a dose as I can, but I may need some help taking some other medications with it to keep my doses down. I think that's one of the first places that you want to start. Be as honest with the physician as you can. But I do think this. I think that patients who have to have a high dose of opioids must not go to a doctor alone. They need to go with a family member, because the family member needs to be able to validate the truth. Not that the patient is untruthful, but the doctor's going to need to be able to have that, in his charts. The patient may even want to ask the doctor, well, doctor, is it well documented that I'm eligible to take this dosage? Bottom line is this. It's not unusual for a patient who's got a severe chronic illness, such as cancer or heart failure or diabetes, to know a lot about their disease. Pain patients need to know a lot about pain, and they need to know what the regulations say. They need to know who to complain to. They need to know how to talk to it in somewhat medical terms. I mean, the idea is that you're just going to go into the doctor and say, doctor, my knee hurts and I'm doing poorly this month. I need some more medicine. Those days are over. You've got to be able to be much more specific about it and to be able to document why does your knee hurt so bad that you're going to need more medication.
So what is really going on? Like, what are the motives of the CDC, government, and pharma concerning the opioid crisis, and why they're putting it out as an opioid crisis and not a pain crisis, a chronic pain crisis?
I think several things occurred, but I think you have to first off understand that pain treatment in this country has been terribly successful. Back around 2001, when they declared the decade of pain, there were about 1 million people in this country taking opioids. So by the year 2015, we have around 12 million people taking opioid drugs. This is emptying out hospitals. This is taking people off the street. This is taking people out of psychiatric facilities. This is putting people back to work. This is giving people a quality of life. It's costing insurance companies money. It's not costing money in another sense, but it's taking money away from hospitals and putting it into the ambulatory patient who's in clinics and taking it away from centers. Well, you have an awful lot of the big players in this country had an economic reason to try to cut opioids out, whether it was in insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, universities, drugstore chains, big government agencies, just big psychiatric facilities. All these big people felt they were being hurt by people being treated for pain, so they just all ganged up as together to launch a political war on pain patients. Yeah. And they were going to use the excuse of overdoses and street use. Well, there was some validity to the street use argument and the overdose argument, but nothing like what they made it out to be. The fact of the matter is, and who are we kidding? The fact is that these people wanted to have, it was an economic thing. Fundamentally.
Right. And, you wouldn't even know from the media and our doctors, the majority of the doctors, that this is so low. Like, I didn't know it until, honestly, I spoke with you. I mean, all of the stats that you could read from CDC guidelines and everything like that, it says that, this is the worst thing in the world. And when you talk about it with other people, because it's, word of mouth now, or listening from the media, that's all you hear. So I have a question. So instead of calling this an opioid crisis, what should we be calling this, or what's a more appropriate name for this huge issue concerning pain patients and the victims of the pain patients?
It's a street drug crisis.
Street drug. All right. So it's a street
drugs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's an illegal street drug problem. Yeah.
What about for the crisis, though, for the people that are getting their pain meds taken away that are chronic pain patients? Are they considered?
Well, no, that's a different issue. Yeah, that's a cruel under-treatment issue.
Okay. All right.
You've got two different issues, and they're trying to make it one.
I agree.
For calling it an opioid crisis. It's a street crisis over there on the one hand, but it's also a cruelty, unkind, tortuous issue on another. So they're trying to mix the two issues into one and trying to saying that the problem with prescription drugs is the cause of the other. What a bunch of bunk. And everybody needs to know that. And also people need to understand that the CDC guidelines, it's not that they're written poorly. It's that they were written in secrecy. They were written with an agenda, and that the government hasn't followed up by guidelines on who can go over the 90 milligrams. They haven't set up any situation to where if they didn't want the primary care doctor to take care of patients, they didn't make arrangements to have them referred anywhere. In other words, they haven't implemented the guidelines in good faith. Mm-hmm. That's the problem with the CDC guidelines. Bad faith in their implementation.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned you have an article coming out next month. What is it, and what is it about?
Surprisingly, in January of 2013, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a position that says undertreated pain is tantamount to cruel, inhuman treatment, and is tantamount to torture. Mm-hmm. And I believe every adult in this country who is a voter needs to understand that the world of pain says undertreated pain is the most basic, or treated pain is the most basic of human rights, and that patients who are undertreated, or they might as well be put on the cross, might as well be tortured by ISIS with their heads cut off. It's the same thing almost. In other words, to leave somebody in severe pain is cruel, it's inhumane, and it goes against the very fundamentals of human dignity. And I think everybody needs to sign you either believe this or you don't. And I hate to say it, But based on everything I can see, we've got a lot of people out there who don't believe people have the right to have their pain treated and live out their life normally relative to their normal lifespan.
Are these doctors?
I think it's across the board. I think you've got doctors involved in this, government agencies, government bureaucrats, politicians, drug company executives, university professors. I think it's all over the board. Mm-hmm. I hate to say it, and maybe they never thought of it that way. So anyway, I read an editorial about it, and I'm calling on every adult in this country to be aware of this issue and to know it's a contemporary issue now, and it needs to be part of any debate about the healthcare system. But more than that, it needs to be a fundamental debate here in the United States. We can send a person to the moon. We can, have an internet system in which 1 billion people can be members. We can do all kinds of great technological things. Well, can't we provide a few pennies of opium treatment to the person who is in so much pain and suffering that they can't even think or stand? Are we asking too much here? I don't think so, but apparently some people do. But I think it's time that this basic fundamental question be asked of everybody, and certainly pain patients and their families need to be leading that charge. Okay? Because pain patients, I hate to say it, up until 2 or 3 years ago, I was like everybody else. I just hated to see pain patients even reveal to their employer or anyone that they had a disease so bad that they had to take morphine. Well, today it's just the opposite. Everybody's got to come out of the closet and tell the public, here's what I have. I've got to take oxycodone, I've got to take methadone, I've got to take fentanyl, and here's why. And be able to tell everybody, all comers, what is their specific disease, here's what I take, and if I can't get this medication, I might as well jump in the grave. And so this is, and I thank goodness that the one thing, I wouldn't even be talking to her today, the pain patient hadn't started coming out of the closet a couple of years ago, saying what diseases they had and the fact that they had to take opioids to stay alive. And every pain patient needs to sign on to do that. We all got to stick together and go out and tell people that's the way it is. Okay? I bet you that of the people that are listening here tonight, I can't ask for a show of hands, but if I did, my guess is that only 1 in 100 would tell me that they have written the state medical board, the commissioner of the FDA, or the head of the DEA, and complain about the non-availability of pain treatment. Let me repeat that. Mm-hmm. How many pain patients or families have already written the commissioner of the FDA, the head of the DEA, or the president of their state medical board and complained about their inability to get decent pain treatment? People haven't even thought along this line. They've got to not only start thinking along that line, they've got to get those names and addresses and pens and pencils out and go to work. This is where we start. In other words, we can't go on having pain patients just talking to each other on Facebook. We've got to have pain patients and their families and their doctors talking to these people who are in these power positions. Otherwise, they're going to end up, in the crash heap of death where all severe untreated pain patients go.
Right. What do you say to the patients that are afraid to speak out? Because I was speaking earlier on this before you came in.
I say it's a natural reaction. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say, if you don't speak out, you're probably going to die anyway.
Right. And they're gonna take it over anyway. Right.
If you don't speak out.
Right.
In other words, but I'm being a little facetious. Let me tell you what I really want them to do. I want them to get together with another pain patient. Go in pairs. It's too scary to go alone. When you write that letter, if you're worried, have a fellow pain patient or a fellow family go together. Have 2 of you sign the same letter, even better 3 or 4. In other words, don't go alone. There's plenty of people out there in the same boat. We all need to get together and sign those letters collectively and let people know what we think and where we stand, and we're not going to take it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, we do have all of your links and everything up. Don't you have a something to take in, or that you could send in to your state senator and stuff like that through the links that you gave me? Because I put everything up on our website and everywhere else. I thought you said that there was something on there that you kind of already wrote up for people that they can use. Is that correct?
Uh, we've had in the last year or so, we've had so many different ones to write, we don't really have a format.
Okay.
Because let me tell you what and I don't want to have a format, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you the format I want people to use, okay? I want people to be honest about what they have. I want them to start out and say, dear Commissioner, or Dear President, I have adhesive arachnoiditis, or Dear Commissioner, I have systemic lupus, or Dear Commissioner, I have reflex sympathetic dystrophy. The first sentence is, tell them what your disease is. And then the second sentence is, I have severe intractable pain, and I must take opioid drugs to stay alive. There is it. And go ahead and tell your story. In other words, it's time that people hear the story of intractable pain patients. We don't have to lie about it. We don't have to exaggerate it. Just give people the facts. I run into people all the time who are not physicians. They know anything about it, and I start telling them about some of the patients that I have. They say, oh my gosh, I know somebody like that. I had an aunt like that. I had an uncle like that. People have family members or they've met somebody who is tragic, just like most of our intractable pain patients. Bottom line, tell the world what disease you have and that you've got to have opioids. Don't ask for opioids. Just tell them about the diseases that cause the need for opioids due to pain. You understand what I'm getting at?
Yes. Yes.
It doesn't do any good if you start writing a letter saying, dear head of the DEA, I need to take more fentanyl.
Right.
It's not going to get you anywhere. It sounds like you're a drug addict. You write them and you tell them that, you've got osteoporosis with 6 crushed vertebrae.
Right.
Okay, this is the kind of thing you want to write and tell them, because a lot of these people in government, they just think pain patients are a bunch of drug addicts.
Absolutely.
So tell them about the disease that's causing the pain, and that's what we need out there. We don't need a template. We need every intractable pain patient to start telling their story as to the disease that causes their pain.
Okay. Well, I'm calling out everybody, all of our listeners out there. If you write something up, let's put it together and send it all in together as one. I think that would be great. Thank you for. I think that's a great idea.
If you want, I will get you. I'll pen a few sentences. It'll take me all of 30 seconds. Okay?
There we go.
Because I truly feel that if patients don't get together, families don't get together, and we don't tell people about the tragic illnesses that cause severe pain, we're going to lose it all.
Yes, and this isn't a question of if, it's when. So if we don't do something, it's just inevitable, and it's going to happen. I think all of us see it happening.
Yes. We see it happening, and I can't even believe it myself. It's embarrassing. I'll be honest about it. It's embarrassing to me to hear some of the attitudes of my fellow physicians. Mm-hmm. It's embarrassing to me to see some of the behaviors of some of the hospitals and emergency rooms, some of the politicians, some of the government bureaucrats. It's embarrassing as a decent American who believes in, I hope, just common decency. I don't think you got to be any big missionary to understand that untreated pain is the same as torture.
Right. Well, and a lot of us are afraid to show up at an ER when, something happened to us because we know how we get treated, and it's not.
Oh, absolutely.
It's horrible.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's horrible.
Yeah.
No, I mean, my first goal with all my patients is, what can we do to make sure we never show up in the local emergency room? It's humiliating.
Yes. You mentioned something about UN Declaration of Pain. Can you speak about that a little bit?
Yes. What's amazing is that this report was written and filed with the United States General Assembly in early 2013. Not a single major media outlet, not a single professional organization, not a single religious organization or government agency spread the word about this.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
No.
No one. As far as I could tell, my article coming out is the first doctor to write about it in a medical journal. And I saying, oh, why me? Why am I ended up doing this? Well, nobody else seems to want to do it, so I'm going to do it.
Thank you.
Because it's the right thing to do. Everybody needs to know about that there is worldwide opinion on this. In other words, also when our pain patients and their families start writing the letters, they ought to refer to the United Nations Declaration, maybe even have a copy of it. I'm writing this editorial, hopefully that it'll get sent hither, thither, and yon, so everybody can start seeing that there is a worldwide opinion to treat people with the most basic of needs, and that is relief of pain and suffering.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we get going tonight?
Yeah, one thing. All of us pain patients and doctors were sort of attacked, like the United States was attacked in Pearl Harbor, without warning, without preparation, and totally confused after the attack. That's what's happened to us in the pain field. Never, I've been at this since 1975. Never did I believe we would have an attack, such a cruel attack on patients or on doctors or on nurses, those of us who just wanted to provide simple pain care. I've never thought that decent pain patients who were in there to have their disease through no fault of their own would become an attack victim, but it has happened. We've been confused over all of this. We're not organized yet, but we're getting there, and each group can do something. And remember, there's a lot of us out there, and we don't have to organize into any political party, but we all need to start doing the basic things, and that is coming out of the closet, telling people our story, educating them as to what causes pain, and above all, putting them put their feet to the fire. Do you believe in human decency or don't you?
Right.
And I hate to make it sound so trite, but that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Do we want to treat our fellow human beings right? We're going to let them die and suffering in the dirt in disgrace. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, we have posted all your links on our website, Facebook page, and Twitter account.
Okay.
So I hope people will click on those and check out all your information. Dr. Forrest, Tennant, thank you so much for all the amazing work you've done and for the chronic pain community and taking time out of your busy schedule to join us this evening. We really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Right.
If there's nothing more important than trying to help all us folks train or treat you get together and let's see if we can win this one. We've got to win it.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's all work together. I will be contacting you in the near future, to work on this more. So, thank you. Have a great night.
Okay. Great talking to you.
You too. Bye bye. So, Call Nation, please, like Dr. Tennant said, please write a letter about your pain. Talk about personal experience. Send this in to your local senators. If you don't know where to send it, let me know. We can tell you where to send it, or maybe we should all do it together. I don't know if anybody has any ideas. Love to hear from comments or questions if you have. And if you would like me to send anything, pass it on to Dr. Tennant, please let me know. And I think that's about it this evening. I just wanted to mention quickly, we will be having a loco contest coming up for CAW 360, the new network that we will be coming out with. There's going to be 5 shows, and it's going to be growing. So if you have any ideas, or let me know, please. But I will be putting up the logo contest shortly. And I just wanted to say, everybody out there that was listening tonight, I know a lot of us have dealt with doctors or ERs or whatever, or just have been treated wrong, even by our family and friends sometimes, and they just don't understand it. We need to stay strong, and we need to unite together, because we are stronger in numbers, and we can be our support system for each other, for others that don't understand it, outside around us that don't get it. So that's what this is all about too, coming on here and sharing this kind of knowledge and information so we can learn and educate each other more. Well, I really appreciate you coming on this evening. I'm sorry about for the 20-minute delay with Dr. Tennant. Yeah, he had an emergency, but I hope you all have a good night. And tomorrow night, Becky will be coming on. She will be talking about her story. She's a wife, and her husband died due to suicide. He was cut off of opiates suddenly, no warning. It was in October of 2014. Also, next week, we are going to be creating a vigil in his honor, but in honor of everybody that it's not just, it's the war on pain period. It's not just people that have died, but it's the war on pain. So I hope you will join us. We're going to be going online live. It will be on the 11th of October. I do have a show that night, but after the show, we will be having a candlelight vigil. I hope you'll join us. The color is going to be brown. I will tell you much more about that in the next few days. I'll put it up on the website or social media accounts. All right, Con Nation, thanks again for joining in, and I'll see you tomorrow night.
Coming soon, Caw 360 Network, with great shows such as Save Our Children, Eden's Living, Enhancing Your World, Wake Sheep, and of course, Conspiracies Against Wellness, and with new topics and faces that will educate, enlighten, and inform. Think of it as your one stop for your daily dose of truth, and you'll be able to get it on the one source you get the Caw show on now. So no hunting all over the internet to find a new link or download new software. We're working hard on the new format and lining up great shows, so stay tuned. Caw 360 Network is going to rock your world.
You've been listening to Conspiracies Against Wellness with Janelle Elgaway. Join us tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern to get in on the conversation. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the host and callers and not necessarily those of EXG LLC, its employees or sponsors. I'm David Schiff.
Copyright 2017 by EXG LLC. All rights reserved.